So Arthur, I want to wish you a happy English birthday, the big 52.
50. Happy birthday, Arthur, also from me as well. Well done.
Yeah, well, you guys are ahead of me, so I'm trying to catch up.
No, it's just not you guys, isn't it? Only me and Kevin.
No, and Kevin, yeah.
Yeah, Damon's younger than you.
Yeah, good, but he's the raw. That's why, he used to be the youngest, the most alert one of us.
That's sweet.
You know,
Sweet.
Damon helping the elderly.
All right, guys, let's get started. Arthur, I hope this year brings you bracha. I hope it's a good year for all of us. Now, Gavin said he felt a little not 100% well when we did the last one, and we didn't do yesterday. I'm just giving a quick summary. So the Gemara, if you remember, in the 117th Dafris, basically recounted several incidents in which are illustrated various laws concerning informers. So you had Rav Huna Bar Yehuda, and he visited a place called Bay Abiyoinai. And he came before Rava, and Rava said to him, listen, have you had any incidents requiring a halachic ruling that have come before you of late? And Rav Huna said to Rava, there actually came before me the case of a Jew who was forced by idolaters to show them the money of his fellow, and I ruled him liable to pay. And Rava said to him, retract your decision and let the money be to return to its rightful owner. For it has been taught in a brisa, if a Jew was forced by idolaters to show them the money of his fellow, he's not liable to repay his fellow, because obviously he would be threatened with death or torture if he would not cooperate. And he didn't take any action. It's not as if he handed over the money to the fellow idolater. But if he took the money in his own hand and gave it to the idolaters, even upon being threatened with death or torture, he is liable. And the reason is because he used somebody else's property to save himself. And the law states that one who destroys the property of another to save himself must pay. And that was in the 74th Daf of Sanhedrin and Aleph. And although one may transgress any sin in order to save one's life, with the exception of idolatry, or forbidden sexual relationships, or murder, if you do destroy the property of another in order to escape, it's fine, but you've got to compensate the owner for the damage. So the brisa differentiates between one who is forced merely to show his fellow's property to an extortionate, and one who's forced to actually take an action and give it to the extortionist with his own hand. In the first case, he's exempt. In the second case, according to Rava, he's liable. And the Rif explains that one coerced into showing property has inflicted only causative damage, whereas one coerced into using his hands has been he then inflicted direct damage upon his fellow Jew. And obviously the brisa does follow the laws of Garmi, and those laws are, according to the rabbinic opinion, if there is indirect or causative damage, that you're liable to pay. It goes without saying, if they don't go according to those opinions, you don't pay anyway. So why would you pay in this particular case? Because there's a leniencies by the rabbis that if you were caused to inflict the damage through indirect means, in order to save your life or due to torture or death, you're given a certain amount of leniency, whereas unfortunately that can't be given even if you are threatened, if you directly get involved and use your own action as the catalyst for giving it to the idolater. Okay? And
Can I just ask you for the reason for that? Sorry, because I don't, yeah. I mean, I don't remember that at all.
Okay.
What's the reason? What's the reason why? With the first case, I understand that's clear. The second case, how come you have to? Why are you implicated? I mean, really, honestly, you've been forced. In both cases, you're forced. So why is there a difference? Sorry, my humble apologies because I didn't hear it.
No problem. All right, I'll tell you why. If we go back to Sanhedrin in the case 74a that we learned with Rav Simcha Steinhauer, and you're dealing with a case of Roy death, where somebody's chasing after you, and you basically say somebody's chasing after you, Gab, and they're going to kill you, but your neighbor's got the keys to his Porsche in the car, and you quickly push him out the way, and you reverse the Porsche to get away, and you half right his car off to get away. Now, think of the days before insurance, where automatically you just claim when you would claim. Could you turn around and say, listen, but this guy was going to kill me. Please, you can't really hold me accountable for taking your car to escape. You think that's a plausible argument? How's it?
It's done as a
Hello?
deterrent to stop guys using it as an excuse, because they can use an excuse.
Or why would they use it as an excuse unless you've got evidence that they're being chased? That's not an excuse, that's robbery.
No, but I mean, you can turn around. If I crash your car, I can say, listen, I took your car and these robbers, even though I crashed it into the wall myself, or I was drunk. I'm saying you can use it. That's why I'm saying the rabbis, they put like a fence around it to stop you.
No, the rabbis have put a fence around it, providing this evidence. Meaning,
Yeah, of course. No, you'll win if there's evidence. If there's no evidence, well, not that you'll win. If there's no evidence, obviously you pay everything.
no, you pay everything either way, because it doesn't entitle you. Listen, there's certain things you can't transgress even if your life's at stake. You can't commit murder, because who's to say another Jew, your blood is redder than another Jew, meaning you've got more value than the other Jew. It even says there's a case where one of the top leaders of Israel, if his life, they say they're going to kill him unless he kills some Jewish drug addict, he's not allowed to take that life of a Jew. And you say, wow, this is one of the leaders of the generation of Jews, and this other guy's been a drug addict sniffing glue for 20 years. The reality is it's not his decision to make. He can't actively snuff the life of another to save his. If, however, there's a single a flask of water in a desert, but he has ownership of it, and there's only enough to save him or his fellow Jew, he may drink from it. Okay, whereas the other is indirect. So there are different laws of garmi, or direct damage. That's number one. Number two.
So just from my understanding, sorry to interrupt. So this is the reason for it is the one's direct and the one's indirect.
Yes,
the one's positive. Okay. So for indirect, I do understand it. So it's indirect. That's why. So because it's indirect, he's still responsible even though it's indirect.
Well, I'll tell you why. Because there two groups. There's two schools of Rabbonim. The one hold that you're liable for garmi, which is indiscernible damage, causative damage, indirect damage. Okay, and there are those rule that you're not liable for that, only in the heavenly court. Okay, there are two schools of thought. Everybody agrees if your own actions created it, there's a problem. We learned earlier in Bava Kamma about the difference between if you set something alight and eventually the fire caught onto your neighbor's property compared to setting him alight directly. We've got this concept of a certain leniency. Now, it doesn't mean you don't pay. If you want to use that previous example of the informer where it's used wine, where it's used wine that became forbidden for use because of the indiscernible damage, or you have chometz that's kept after Pesach like Scotch whiskey, and you return the bottle back to him for that causative damage, or because it's not discernible. It's not like you damage the bottle, Gavin, by drinking the contents or smashing it. In that particular case, you're not biblically liable at all. Rabbinically, they make you liable as a deterrent. But because there's a rabbinic stringency, there can be a rabbinic leniency. When there's a biblical stringency, there can't always be a rabbinic leniency. Do you get? Unless there's a good reason. So here, where the rabbinic stringency is making somebody responsible for indirect damage, causative damage, when in fact you could be an informer and say to SARS, the neighbor's got assets, he must pay his taxes. You don't know if A, SARS will take action, B, if speech is considered actual damage, and C, if you can, it's not as if you stole that asset from the guy directly. and you've done it by your own hands. You've done it through surreptitious means. And therefore, there's a rabbinic stringency to make a person liable to deter them. In this particular case, we are saying that if you caused it by your own hand, that somebody said they'll kill you, or they'll torture you unless you steal your neighbor's property and give it. We understand that he did it, but he has to pay it back. He still has to pay it back. Yeah, but it's not your neighbor's fault. It's not your neighbor's fault if your neighbor came up to you and took your car to avoid getting accosted and he wrote it off and you weren't insured. Why shouldn't he pay it back? He should in any event be grateful that you gave him the mechanism to save his life. He has to pay you back. Okay, so that's reasonable. The only thing of it is if he didn't do that, but somebody basically said, listen, they'll kill or torture him unless he lets you know the combination to your safe. The rabbi said under that duress, it's because it's indirect that we can be lenient. It's not that we're lenient because it's indirect. It's because your life's at risk. But your life isn't risk for direct damage. Okay? Because it's the same thing if a mafia boss says to a hitman, unless you take this person out, I'm going to take you out. He's the one that actually transgressed by pulling the trigger. And therefore he can't say because you meant to give up your life rather than cost somebody their life. So in other words, the leniency, even in extenuating circumstances, is only with causative damage because it's rabbinic in nature. So the stringency of applying a cost to something that doesn't necessarily link cause and effect, doesn't necessarily result in physical action of damage and destruction by the party of the one due to the other, but it's merely said through speech. These sort of things are a stringency to make sure people don't do that against their fellows due to the South African Revenue Service or the American Revenue Service. So therefore, it's a stringency. So only in cases where their life is threatened and they had nothing to gain other than saving their life was the leniency for a rabbinic stringency, but not for a biblical stringency. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect. Clear. Thank you.
Okay. So we see from this brisa that one who was forced to show money is not liable. Perforce Rav Huna Bar Yehuda erred in his ruling. And the Gemara comments on this brisa that Rabba said, R-A-B-B-A-H, not Rava, that if he showed them the money on his own without being forced, it's as if he took it in his hand and gave it to them, therefore he's liable. In other words, what we are saying is if there is no coercion, but he just had something to gain, like he was going to get a share of the money, it wasn't at force or pain of death or torture, there's a liability. And the Gemara therefore relates and says that there was a certain person whom the idolaters forced to show the wine of Rav Mari, the son of Rav Pinchas, the son of Rav Chisda. Okay, so what's this particular case about? Is that this person obviously was also threatened with torture and death. It's not with simply the loss of money. And that's why the Gemara had it as juxtapositions to the first brisa. And the idolaters forced him to show the wine of Rav Mari. Okay? And they said to him, pick up the wine and come with us to the king's palace. Now he was forced by just showing it to them, at which he would have been off the hook for causative damage, to physically picking it up, at which case there's direct damage. And later this came before Rav Ashi to be judged. And Rav Ashi exempted him from paying the wine since he acted under duress. And this is the proof that the rabbi said to Rav Ashi, you can't do this because it's been taught in a brisa. If he took the money in his hand and gave it to idolaters, he's liable because there's an action orientation. But this case, where he did so, he should also be liable. It's not a case where he just showed it to them. He actually helped bring it to the palace as per their instruction. And Rav Ashi said to them, it's not where he first, they said these words are where he did not first take the extortioners to the money, but simply went and brought it to him. But where he first took the extortioners to the money, he has already burned the money. So this is what it's saying is, if the idolaters who were going to torture him said, you go get the wine and bring it back, he's liable. That's direct. But if the instruction to him was, show us first the wine in his cellar, and let's take the expensive wine, and he showed it to him so that he wouldn't be tortured, he's off the hook, because at the time where they set their eyes, Kevin, upon the expensive wines and whiskies, etc., it's as if the wine was already burnt or the money was already burnt. They're merely looking at it and salivating for that free asset meant that if the Jew at that point picked it up and was told to by the non-Jew, it was merely a consequence of them having already in their mind convinced themselves that it belongs to them. And therefore, it wasn't a case where he brought it to them and then they were happy with it. They first set their eyes on it, and then there was that course of action.
But isn't that, sorry to interrupt, isn't that indirect? Shouldn't that be causative and it should be liable still? But obviously at a more with leniency, shouldn't it be similar to the other example? It sounds the same.
Okay, so Rav Ashi answered that obviously in the Bryce's case, where the idolaters forced him to bring the money at once, then that's direct damage, is full liability, okay? But in this case that Rav Ashi brought, the idolaters first forced that he show him the wine. At that point, it's just causative. Now, after he showed it to them, Gavin, they demanded that he hand it to them. That was a second stage. But since they'd already been told about the wine that caused it, which was causative, the fact afterwards that they then handed it over to them or helped them carry it was in effect handling their own wine, because in their mind it was already in their possession. And therefore there was a leniency that ruled him exempt. Okay. Does that make sense?
Not really. Yeah. No, I hear you. I hear you. But why can't you say that in lots of these causative examples, to say it was already in their mind and stuff? I mean, how do we know it was in their mind? You know, to me.
No. So this issue of the ush, for example, despair, you could say, well, how do we know that a guy despaired of it? That's a perfect example. How do we know? This guy might give up early and this guy might give up late. So it's a similar sort of proposition. How can you read somebody's mind? So the first thing of it is you're just missing one particular thing here, is that because there is coercion under death or torture, there's a leniency where possible. There cannot be a leniency for an action taken. So let's look at the three cardinal sins: murder, idolatry, and forbidden sexual relations. So let's take murder. A Nazi death officer, SS officer, says to a Jew, kill this other Jew or I'll kill you. He's not allowed to do it, even under coercion, okay? Because that is direct damage. Okay, that's direct. He has to use his own hands to save his life by killing somebody that's innocent. And so to here, when there's a case of theft, if he has to steal under the case of torture or death, he can give it to them, but he has to pay the person that he stole from back. Because the minute there's a direct action and there's a biblical edict against theft, despite the reason, he still has to make financial restitution. Because we learned that normative tort law of the laws of compensation. And therefore, if you took something from someone, you have to compensate them for their loss, Gav. Okay? The minute it's a fine, a knas, is where it's indirect. Somebody's going to torture you and roast you, then you tell them, oh, this one's got a safe, and this is the barcode, and if you can prove you were going to be tortured, that is a knas. How do you know it's a knas? Because indirect damage, you never took it directly. So you can't compensate him for an action you committed. You told somebody else, which is one step removed, and they took the action and took the goods. Do you get what I'm saying? And therefore, under threat of death or torture, there's a leniency because of that knas, that rabbinical stringency of deterrent. Only in that case. In a case where somebody took direct action, so Rav Ashi is basically saying, but in this case, he does have to take direct action when the idolaters ask him to take the wine back to the palace. So why should he be off the hook? And the reason Rav Ashi says, Gavin, that he has to be off the hook is because if there was a stage before that he had to almost shoplift the wine or the whiskey on behalf of the idolaters to save himself, if there was no, what do you call it, previous step, then he'd be liable. But because here the first action of the idolaters was to say, well, show me what Rav Murray has in terms of his wine cellar. When they were brought down to the wine cellar, at that particular case, they then said, well, listen, we can't lift up all the stuff and take it out. You need to help us. Otherwise, we'll bash you to death. So he did it because in their mind, once they had a full view of it, they had already in their mind determined that they were entitled to it. And therefore, the rabbi, Rav Ashi specifically, and the rabbis don't agree with him or Gavin, it's just Rav Ashi's opinion. But according to Rav Ashi, at the point where they saw what was done, the Jew that informed on his fellow Jew Rav Murray already burned the money, meaning by that indirect act of causative damage, it was already as if it was lost at that point, because the idolaters, it was merely logistics that he helped them move at that point, because he already showed it to them. If he took it to them without them having viewed it, he would be fully liable. So Rav Ashi is trying to find a leniency by saying what first happened was they saw it and he showed it to them. And after that, they realized they couldn't carry it out. And therefore, at the point where they saw it, they'd already seen it as theirs in terms of acquisition. And this Jew was merely helping them cart their own stuff out, what they deemed to be their own. And therefore, he was off the hook after he showed it to them. Do you understand how Rav Ashi gets to that?
Yeah, no, I do. I have a different opinion. I'm keen to hear the other guy.
No, well, the rabbis don't agree, especially the Rif. The Rif said that
I'm on the same side there.
Yeah.
I also think so.
Yeah. So the Gemara challenges Rav Ashi's ruling because Rav Abayu challenged Rav Ashi from the following brisa. If an extortionist said to somebody, extend to me this bundle of straw, or extend to me this cluster of grapes, and he extended it to him, he's liable to pay. So in order for anybody to argue with Rav Ashi, they have to put a contradicting brisa. Now, in this case, the extortionist was already standing near the produce. Nevertheless, the fellow is liable for handing it to him. So this seems to contradict the ruling of Rav Ashi. And the Gemara says, no, you've got to examine the words, because what are you dealing with here? If it's a case where the extortionist and the produce were located on two opposite sides of the river, since the extortionist couldn't have reached the produce himself, he couldn't have reached the Jew to bash him, and therefore the Jew is liable to handling it from him. So how do we get this sort of interpretation? Because the Gemara uses this word in the brisa, if you extend to me the bundle of straw. In other words, the intimidator says to the Jew, if you don't extend to me the bundle of straw, I'm going to bash you, or if you do not give me the cluster of grapes. And clearly, when it's got this case of extend it to me, it means you've got to hand it to me. Why would you ask it to be handed to you, Gavin? Because you can't reach it yourself. And therefore, if you can't reach the produce, and only the Jew can, that means the Jew's closer to the produce, otherwise you would have taken it yourself, right? And therefore, since the Jew is closer to the produce, and you can't reach the produce, you can't reach the Jew either to bash him. And therefore, the Jew that decided to hand it to you, even though he was physically out of reach from the extortionist, he's liable because in that case, he wouldn't have been bashed. So that's how it refutes Rav Abayu's challenge to Rav Ashi. Okay? Then it goes to another case with this Rif, where the Rif basically employs that exchange to refute the view of those who hold that one is forced to hand over specific properties belonging from one to another is exempt. And he said, listen, the whole reason it's exempt is because you could basically say, in any case when when you hand it over, the person made up their mind to steal. So whether I hand it over to him or not, what difference does it make if I directly deal with it? And that's what Gavin's saying. Rav Ashi was trying to find a leniency and said, look, If you first handed the idolaters the produce, there's a problem. But since you just showed them the area and then they made up their mind and needed a helping hand, and you already showed it to them, at the point that you showed it to them, because it's not direct and causative, only in nature, and you didn't help yourself, at that point when they took their eyes on it, they were already deciding it was theirs, and therefore you burnt the money by your big mouth. But that's enough to exempt you under the exception of torture or death, okay, that you're not liable. So the Gemara then relates a similar story, that there's a certain bear trap or animal trap, and two guys were fighting over, two Jews. One said it's mine, the other Jew said it's mine. And then one of them went and handed it over to the office of a king. And that's where a buyer said, can't be held liable, because he can say, listen, I handed it over, which I considered that which was my own. In other words, he didn't intend to harm his fellow, but he only took what he considered to be his own, and therefore, according to a buyer, is not regarded as an informer. Look, obviously, in this case, Gavin, neither of them was holding onto a trap, that animal trap. They simply claimed it as their own, because we learned in Bava Kamma that when you hold onto it, Rabbi Tovia Sifras taught me, at that point there's an acquisition. Now, if two people lay claim to an object that is in the possession of neither, and the court lacks evidence on which to base the ruling, whoever is stronger prevails. And where's that in Bava Basra 34b? And that means that basically the court withdraws and allows the stronger litigant, in terms of physical power or strength of evidence, to seize the disputed property. So at that point, I suppose a physical stronger person would win, and that would bother me, because then there's always a case of physical people bullying smaller people. So I think it would go to the other point of strength of evidence. In other words, there's no evidence that somebody owns it. So, for example, if a bigger guy took it from a smaller guy, but the smaller guy could prove he bought the vacuum cleaner from Macro, he gets to keep it. So there has to be some sort of evidence. Otherwise, if the one person has it, how are you legally going to extract it unless you've got proof? Because the onus is on the person that wished to extract from his fellow, who needs the proof. So if the one guy physically took it from another guy to get it back would need the court's help, and therefore he needs evidence that he has a share of it, or certainly has, ownership of it in some purchase manner. So a buyer holds that just as a litigant may seize the object himself, can allow the officer of the king to take it. Rava disagrees, Gavin. He said to him, this is not within his power. Of course not. Why is it not within his power? Because although you can, the stronger party, whether evidentially or physical strength or possession is 9/10 of the law, can acquire the article for himself, as to the fact that the other person doesn't have more full evidence to extract the article from him, you can't appoint a third party to seize it in your stead. Okay? And therefore, Rava said that if he handed it over, unless he gets it back from the officers at the king, at that point, by the way, he's going to have to pay a small fortune to get it back, because they're going to realize how valuable it is, and they're not going to give it back unless he pays like 5 times what the bear trap's worth in order to get it back. And that's the lesson. And if he doesn't get it back, we put him in khairim, we excommunicate him, and until he brings it back and it stands in court and the dispute is adjudicated, and whoever has the strongest evidence will win. So some hold that Rava agrees that this person is not considered to be an informer. Why? Even Rava does agree that, because his intent wasn't to cause monetary harm to his fellow, but he wants to take what's rightfully his. Anyway, the rabbis decreed that he's got to be excommunicated until he retrieves the article, because it's used as a deterrent, that it can't become regular practice that if something is in dispute, you give it to a third party like a trust account to just maintain control. And other opinions on Rava say that this person is an informer because he took what wasn't his. Thought it was he's got no business giving it to a third party. It should have gone through a proper ruling, and he'd be no less liable if he physically took it himself. But unfortunately, the other guy could, in Shemaim, he'd be liable. The other guy can't extract it unless there is evidence to prove that it's owned by him. Okay. So I think that's a summary of yesterday. Is there any questions? We can end early.
Thanks. That was not fantastic.
Damon,
That was
can you give the two? I was sorry, I was just very noisy and I was in.
Can you
I put
teach
my
us?
phone in the bag. Yeah, I was very okay, but yeah, I'll try to excuse the noise. So I've got a book. Remember we did a speaking a few weeks ago. We did so I've got a book on friendship, and one of the chapters there. Hopefully you guys hear me.
Yeah.
Okay, is about rebuke. Now, rebuke means pointing out to somebody that they've done something wrong and they need to not repeat that same action again in the future. It's doing it in a sensitive way. If I think I know someone who is not acting appropriately, and I think I'm going to make him change his ways, if I tell him and point out his error to him, if he's not going to change, he's going to take it the wrong way, then I can't do it. And you have to point out that the issue, not make it personal. It's not about the person. But I've had experience of people trying to rebuke me, but they attack me and they did it in a way like holier than thou way, which wasn't effective. So that if you know how to do it correctly, you've got to be sensitive and not make out as if you're attacking the person, but the action. But it has to be done in a very sensitive way. But sometimes maybe someone else will do it if it's not going to be effective. And face the person, you can face the person more Yiddish stuff in a way.
Yeah, it's true. It's your approach. You're absolutely right, Kevin. It's your approach.
I mean, I've had people with me, as I said, and they've really been very arrogant. And the people that have arrogance are usually people with skeletons in their closet. And they kind of show how firm they are and how holier it comes from a place of superiority and not of empathy and sensitivity. That's the key.
Yeah, no, it's true. There's two things. There's skeletons in their closets, and they're missing a couple of teaspoons in their cutlery set.
Yeah.
Kev, it's difficult to hear you. It sounds like a hectic noise. But
Yeah,
I
I'm
wish
back
you all
there,
a
guys.
Okay,
wonderful
Damon,
Shabbos.
stop the recording, Damon. I'll show you the station if you want.
Okay.